My name is Morgan Reynolds, and I'm 32 years old. I still remember that day so vividly, sitting alone in my dream home that took 7 years of sacrifice to afford. I kept checking my phone, waiting for anyone from my family to arrive at my housewarming party. The elaborate spread of food remained untouched as hours passed. No cars pulled into the driveway. No congratulatory hugs. What should have been the happiest day of my life became the moment that forever changed how I viewed family. Before I dive into my heartbreaking story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories about family, betrayal, and finding strength in unexpected places. I grew up in a small, working-class town outside Boston, where everyone knew everyone's business. My childhood home was a modest 2-bedroom rental with faded yellow siding and a perpetually broken porch step. My mother, Rebecca, raised me and my siblings single-handedly after my father walked out when I was 5 years old. He simply packed his bags one Tuesday afternoon while Mom was at work, leaving nothing but a hastily scribbled note on the kitchen table and a hole in our lives that would never quite heal. Despite Dad's absence, we had a close-knit extended family during those early years. Weekends meant trips to my grandparents' house, where Grandma Eleanor would bake her famous apple pies while Grandpa Harold taught us how to play poker using pennies instead of chips. Holidays were chaotic affairs filled with laughter and too many relatives crammed into too little space. My Aunt Diane would bring her 4 kids, my cousins, and we'd create elaborate games that turned the entire house into an adventure playground. Money was always tight in our household. Mom worked double shifts as a nurse's aide to keep food on the table. I remember the nights she'd come home with dark circles under her eyes, her hands raw from cleaning products, only to start cooking dinner and helping with homework. Those early experiences watching my mother stretch a dollar until it screamed shaped my relationship with money in profound ways. From an early age, I showed academic promise. While my older brother James excelled at sports and my younger sister Ashley was the artistic one, I found my identity in books and learning. Report card days became my moment to shine. Mom would proudly display my straight A's on the refrigerator, though I sometimes caught the flash of something else in my siblings' eyes, a mixture of pride and resentment that would only grow stronger with time. By high school, I'd become obsessively focused on academic success as my ticket out. While my friends were going to parties and having typical teenage experiences, I was working part-time at the local grocery store, saving every penny, and studying until midnight most evenings. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Patel, became my biggest advocate, helping me navigate college applications and scholarship opportunities. The day my acceptance letter to Boston University arrived with a partial scholarship was like winning the lottery. I remember Mom crying happy tears while simultaneously worrying about how we'd cover the remaining costs. Grandma Eleanor slipped me a check for $500 she'd been saving, and for the first time, I saw true pride in my brother James's eyes when he offered me his old laptop for schoolwork. College was a culture shock in every possible way. I was suddenly surrounded by students from privileged backgrounds who'd never worked a day in their lives, while I juggled 3 part-time jobs, cafeteria worker, library assistant, and weekend nanny, just to afford textbooks and the tiny room I rented off campus. There were nights I'd be so exhausted that I'd fall asleep at the library, drooling onto my economics textbook. I'd come home for holidays bearing small gifts purchased with my meager earnings, only to feel the growing distance between us. My stories about professors and campus life seemed to bore my siblings, who'd both started working right after high school. My mother would listen politely but often change the subject to local gossip or family matters, as if trying to pull me back into the fold. During my junior year, I met Tyler in my business ethics class. He was smart, ambitious, and had a 5-year plan that rivaled my own. Our relationship blossomed over late-night study sessions and dreams of future success. He encouraged my ambitions when I was offered an internship at a prestigious marketing firm in downtown Boston. For 2 years, we were partners in every sense, pushing each other toward our goals. When I graduated summa cum laude, my family attended the ceremony. I still have the photo, Mom looking uncomfortable in her one good dress, James fidgeting with his tie, Ashley texting throughout most of the ceremony, and my grandparents beaming with genuine pride. It was the last time we truly celebrated one of my achievements together. My entry-level position at the marketing firm paid barely enough to cover living expenses, but it was a foot in the door. Tyler and I moved in together to save on rent, sharing a tiny studio apartment with a kitchenette barely big enough to turn around in. We'd eat ramen noodles on our fold-out sofa bed and talk about the future we were building. But as I began climbing the corporate ladder, putting in 60-hour weeks and networking at every opportunity, Tyler and I began to drift apart. "You're never home," he'd complain, or "we haven't had a real conversation in weeks." When a promotion required me to travel to client meetings, the breaking point came. "I feel like I'm dating your calendar, not you," he said the night he moved out, leaving me alone in that tiny apartment with my ambitions and growing bank account as my only companions. The dream of owning my own home took root during those lonely months after Tyler left. I was 25, recently promoted to account manager, and tired of throwing money away on rent. One Sunday afternoon, while walking through an established neighborhood with tree-lined streets, I found myself slowing down in front of a particular style of house, a craftsman bungalow with a welcoming front porch, mature landscaping, and warm light spilling from the windows. I stood on the sidewalk for nearly 20 minutes, imagining what it would be like to belong somewhere so permanent and beautiful. That evening, I created a spreadsheet that would become my obsession for the next 7 years. I researched average home prices in desirable Boston suburbs, calculated mortgage rates, property taxes, insurance costs, and maintenance expenses. The numbers were sobering. I would need at least $70,000 for a down payment, closing costs, and a renovation fund to purchase anything remotely like my dream home. Given my current salary and expenses, reaching that goal would take approximately 7 years of disciplined saving. I printed out the spreadsheet and taped it to my refrigerator, creating a visual reminder of my goal every time I reached for food. Next to it, I placed a picture of a craftsman bungalow torn from a real estate magazine, my North Star. My saving plan was ruthlessly specific. I automatically transferred 30% of each paycheck to a dedicated savings account that I vowed never to touch. I cut my budget to the bone: no vacations, no restaurant meals unless they were business-related, no new clothes except what was required for work. I learned to coupon with military precision, meal prep on Sundays for the entire week, and find free entertainment options around the city. My career trajectory continued upward as I poured all my energy into work. Each promotion and annual bonus brought me closer to my goal, the numbers on my savings tracker steadily climbing. My boss, Natalie, recognized my dedication and began mentoring me, giving me increasingly visible projects and client accounts. When she recommended me for a senior account executive position after just 3 years at the firm, my salary jumped significantly, and my savings timeline accelerated. While my bank account grew, my social life withered. Friends eventually stopped inviting me out, tired of my constant refusals or early departures to prepare for Monday meetings. My apartment remained Spartan, the minimum furniture needed, no decorative touches, nothing that would take money away from my house fund. Family relationships suffered too. I missed my nephew's baptism due to a client emergency, sending a generous gift card instead. I arrived late to Thanksgiving dinner after finishing a proposal, only to face passive-aggressive comments from my sister Ashley about my priorities. Christmas visits became shorter each year, with conversations increasingly strained as we had less and less in common. "You've changed," my mother remarked during one holiday visit, her tone making it clear this wasn't a compliment. "All you talk about is work and that house you're saving for. There's more to life than money, Morgan." "It's not about money, Mom," I tried explaining. "It's about security and building something for myself." "Well, while you're building something for yourself, you're missing everything happening here," she replied, gesturing to the family gathered in her living room. "James's kids are growing up without really knowing their aunt." The comment stung because there was truth to it. My niece had been shy around me, treating me more like a stranger than family. But what my mother couldn't understand was the drive that pushed me forward, the determination not to struggle financially the way she had. When Grandpa Harold passed away during my 5th year of saving, I took only 2 days off work for the funeral, rushing back to Boston for an important client presentation. I saw the disapproving looks from relatives as I hugged Grandma Eleanor goodbye, promising to call more often, a promise we both knew would be broken amidst my 70-hour workweeks. Your grandfather would have understood, Grandma said kindly, though I detected disappointment behind her words. He always said you were going places. Those words haunted me on the train ride back to Boston. Was I going places at the expense of what truly mattered? But then I'd check my savings account, seeing the growing sum that represented freedom and accomplishment, and the doubt would recede. There were setbacks along the way. My car's transmission failed completely, requiring a $2,100 repair that I hadn't budgeted for. I developed a kidney infection after ignoring symptoms too long, resulting in medical bills that set my timeline back by months. During a particularly harsh winter, a pipe burst in my apartment, damaging some of my work clothes and electronics. Each setback only strengthened my resolve. I picked up freelance marketing projects on weekends, started a small social media consulting business for local shops, and even participated in market research studies that paid cash. Every extra dollar went straight into my house fund. To keep my dream tangible, I began attending open houses on Sunday afternoons, not as a serious buyer yet, but as research. I'd walk through homes of various styles and price points, taking mental notes about features I loved or hated. Real estate agents would eagerly hand me their cards, sensing my seriousness despite my candor about my timeline. In my apartment, I created a vision board that grew more specific over the years. Paint swatches in warm neutrals, magazine cutouts of gardens and kitchens, photos of built-in bookshelves and window seats. Next to my savings tracker, I added a mortgage calculator that showed how much house I could afford as my down payment grew. By year 6, I was promoted to Director of Client Services, now managing a team of account executives and earning bonuses that accelerated my savings dramatically. I allowed myself one small celebration, upgrading from my 10-year-old mattress to a quality one that would eventually move with me to my dream home. It was my first furniture purchase with the future in mind, a tangible reminder that my goal was within reach. As the 7-year mark approached, I began to research neighborhoods more seriously, familiarizing myself with school districts, property tax rates, and community amenities. I subscribed to real estate alerts and began building relationships with mortgage lenders to understand exactly what I would qualify for with my income, excellent credit score, and substantial down payment. The distance between my family and me had grown into a chasm by this point. My visits home had dwindled to major holidays only, and even those were strained affairs filled with comments about how I'd gone all city on them or questions about when I'd settle down with someone nice. What they couldn't see was that I was on the verge of settling down, not with a person, but with the home and security I'd sacrificed everything to achieve. Finally, after 7 years of relentless saving and career building, I reached my goal. My savings account showed $85,000, enough for a substantial down payment and all associated costs of homeownership. At 32 years old, I was ready to find my dream home. The first step was getting pre-approved for a mortgage. I gathered years of tax returns, bank statements, investment records, and employment verification. The mortgage broker, Richard, seemed impressed by my financial organization and spotless credit history. "You've done everything right," he told me as he handed over the pre-approval letter. "You're qualified for more than most first-time buyers I work with. This puts you in a strong position in this competitive market." I left his office clutching the letter like a golden ticket, immediately calling the realtor whose card I'd kept from an open house months earlier. Stephanie had specialized in the neighborhoods I was targeting and understood exactly what I was looking for. Craftsman-style, established neighborhood, at least 3 bedrooms, preferably with a home office space, mature landscaping, and within 30 minutes of downtown, I explained during our first official meeting. I've been dreaming about this for 7 years, so I'm particular about what I want. Stephanie didn't seem fazed by my specificity. "The good news is, you know exactly what you want and you're financially prepared. That's rare for first-time buyers. The challenging part is finding the perfect match in your price range in this market." The housing search began in earnest the following weekend. Each Saturday and Sunday for the next 2 months became a parade of properties, some promising from the outside but disappointing within, others with perfect interiors but located on busy streets or too far from the city. The first house we visited was in a perfect location but needed extensive renovations. I walked through rooms with outdated wallpaper and shag carpeting, trying to envision the potential beneath. The kitchen had appliances from the 1970s, and the bathroom featured an alarming pink tile that seemed to be melting off the walls. It would take at least $50,000 to make this livable, I told Stephanie as we left. And that's money I don't have budgeted right now. The second property was a flip, beautifully staged with contemporary finishes, but the renovation had clearly been done quickly and cheaply. I noticed uneven floor tiles, cabinet doors that didn't quite align, and the unmistakable smell of fresh paint covering mildew. "This is lipstick on a pig," Stephanie whispered as we examined a shower stall where caulk was already separating from the wall. "You'd be dealing with issues within months." Week after week, the disappointments mounted. A house with perfect bones but located under flight paths with planes roaring overhead every 15 minutes. A beautiful property that backed up to commercial zoning, with a dumpster visible from the master bedroom. A seemingly perfect bungalow that inspection revealed had foundation issues that would cost a fortune to repair. The emotional roller coaster was exhausting. I'd walk into a house feeling hopeful, already imagining where my furniture would go, only to discover the fatal flaw that took it out of contention. After viewing nearly 30 properties, discouragement began to set in. "Maybe I need to compromise more," I told Stephanie after another disappointing Sunday. "Perhaps I'm being too picky." "You've waited 7 years and saved diligently," she reminded me. "This isn't the time to settle. The right house is out there." 2 weeks later, Stephanie called with excitement in her voice. "I've found it. It's not even officially on the market yet, it's a pocket listing. The owners are relocating for work and need to sell quickly. It checks every box on your list and then some." The house was in the Oakdale neighborhood, an established area with tree-lined streets and a mix of young professionals and families. As we pulled up to the address, my heart skipped a beat. It was a 1920s craftsman bungalow with a deep front porch, mature oak trees, and landscaping that included hydrangea bushes just coming into bloom. "The owners have done all the major updates already," Stephanie explained as we walked up the front steps. "New roof 5 years ago, updated electrical, new HVAC system last year, and they renovated the kitchen and bathrooms 2 years ago." The moment I stepped inside, I knew. Hardwood floors gleamed beneath natural light streaming through original leaded glass windows. The living room featured a brick fireplace with a craftsman-style mantel and built-in bookshelves. The updated kitchen maintained the home's vintage charm while incorporating modern appliances and conveniences. Upstairs, 3 bedrooms included a primary suite with a walk-in closet and renovated ensuite bathroom. The smallest bedroom had been converted into a perfect home office with custom shelving. The partially finished basement offered additional storage and laundry facilities. The backyard featured a deck perfect for entertaining and enough garden space to fulfill my dreams of growing vegetables and flowers. "This is it," I whispered to Stephanie as we stood in the sunlit kitchen. "This is exactly what I've been saving for." The asking price was at the upper end of my budget, but with my substantial down payment, the monthly mortgage would still be manageable. I submitted an offer that same day, slightly under asking price but with a quick closing timeline that I knew would appeal to the relocating owners. The next 24 hours were the longest of my life. I couldn't sleep, constantly checking my phone for news from Stephanie. When the call finally came, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely answer. "They countered," Stephanie said, and my heart sank momentarily. "But it's a fair counter. They're meeting you almost halfway between your offer and asking. They appreciate your quick closing timeline and solid financing." I accepted the counter offer immediately. What followed was a whirlwind of paperwork, inspections, and mortgage processing. The home inspector found only minor issues: a dripping faucet, a window that needed recaulking, and gutters that needed cleaning. Nothing that would derail the purchase. When the mortgage was approved and the closing date set, I finally allowed myself to believe this was actually happening. I called my mother with the news, hoping to share my excitement. "That's nice," honey, she said, her tone flat. Sounds expensive. Will you be house poor now? No, Mom, I budgeted carefully, I explained, trying to keep disappointment from my voice. I've been planning this for 7 years, remember? I'll still be putting money away for retirement and emergencies. Well, I hope it's worth all those family events you missed, she replied. Ashley's still hurt you missed her art show opening last year, you know. I ended the call feeling deflated rather than celebratory. That evening, I opened a bottle of champagne alone in my apartment, surrounded by packing boxes, toasting my achievement in solitude. The closing day finally arrived. I sat at a conference table signing document after document, my hand cramping but my heart soaring. When the attorney finally slid the keys across the table to me, saying "Congratulations, homeowner," tears sprang to my eyes. I drove directly to my new house, and stood in the empty living room, keys clutched in my hand, overwhelmed by emotion. 7 years of sacrifice and single-minded determination had led to this moment. I walked through each room again, this time as the owner, running my hands along walls that now belonged to me. Moving day came the following weekend. I'd hired professional movers since none of my family offered to help, despite my mentions of the upcoming move during our brief phone conversations. The movers efficiently transferred my modest belongings from the apartment to the house, the process taking only a few hours given how little I owned. That first night in my new home was a mixture of triumph and solitude. I'd ordered takeout and sat on the floor of my living room, using a moving box as a makeshift table. The house echoed with emptiness, waiting to be filled with furniture, memories, and perhaps one day, family. As I prepared for bed in my new primary bedroom, the mattress on the floor until my bed frame was delivered, I looked out the window at the moonlight illuminating my backyard. You did it, I whispered to myself. This is yours. All yours. After 2 weeks of settling into my new home, unpacking boxes, and arranging furniture deliveries, I made a decision that would ultimately change everything. I would host a housewarming party and invite my entire family. Despite the growing distance between us, this seemed like the perfect opportunity to reconnect and show them what their support and encouragement had meant to me over the years. I wanted them to see that my sacrifices and focus hadn't been about leaving them behind but about creating something meaningful. Perhaps seeing the physical manifestation of my dream would help bridge the gap that had formed between us. The planning began with the creation of formal invitations rather than casual text messages. I spent an entire evening designing them, including a photo of the house and detailed directions. For family members coming from out of town, my grandma Eleanor, Aunt Diane, and cousins, I specifically mentioned that I had guest rooms ready and they were welcome to stay overnight. I mailed the invitations 6 weeks in advance to give everyone plenty of time to arrange their schedules. Within days, the responses started coming in, mostly positive. My mother called to say she'd be there barring any emergencies at work, which I took as a good sign. James texted that he and his wife Sarah would come with the kids. Ashley responded with surprising enthusiasm, asking if she could bring her new boyfriend. Even Grandma Eleanor called to say she'd booked a bus ticket to come stay for the weekend. With confirmations rolling in, I threw myself into preparation with the same dedication I'd applied to saving for the house. I created detailed shopping lists, menu plans, and decoration ideas. The party would be a Saturday afternoon affair, casual enough for children to attend but special enough to mark the significance of the occasion. Each weekend leading up to the party was filled with preparations. I painted the dining room the perfect shade of sage green, installed new light fixtures in the entryway, and planted flower boxes beneath the front windows. I wanted everything to be perfect when my family arrived. The menu planning was especially thoughtful. I incorporated family favorites, my brother James's preferred craft beer, my sister Ashley's favorite chocolate raspberry dessert, my mother's beloved crab dip recipe. For the kids, I created a special corner with child-friendly snacks and activities. I even found my grandmother's apple pie recipe and practiced until I could make a reasonable facsimile of her signature dessert. Shopping for party supplies, I splurged on quality disposable plates that looked like real china, cloth napkins in autumnal colors, and stemless wine glasses that wouldn't easily tip over. I created a playlist filled with family favorites, including the classic rock my brother loved and the 90s pop my sister still listened to nostalgically. 3 weeks before the party, I called my mother to finalize details. Our conversation was the warmest we'd had in years as we discussed food preparations and whether my cousin Taylor's new baby would need any special accommodations. "It'll be nice to have everyone under one roof again," Mom said, a softness in her voice I hadn't heard in a long time. "Your grandma is especially excited. She's been telling everyone at her senior center about her granddaughter's new house." That conversation left me feeling hopeful and connected. Perhaps this house would become the new gathering place for family celebrations, the hub that would bring us back together after years of growing apart. I prepared the guest rooms with special care: new sheets, extra blankets, reading lamps with adjustable brightness, and small baskets of toiletries and snacks. In the room where Grandma would stay, I placed framed family photos on the nightstand, including one of her and Grandpa on their 50th anniversary. The week before the party, I took a rare day off work to deep clean the entire house. Every surface was polished, every floor vacuumed or mopped, every window washed until it sparkled. I arranged fresh flowers throughout the house and made sure the guest towels were perfectly folded in each bathroom. 6 days before the event, the first cancellation came in. My cousin Taylor texted that her baby had a cold and she didn't want to travel with a sick infant. It seemed reasonable enough, and I sent a caring response, telling her I completely understood. 4 days before, my Aunt Diane called to say her car was having transmission problems and she wouldn't be able to make the 3-hour drive. "So sorry, honey," she said. "Maybe we can come another time when the car's fixed." 3 days before, my brother James texted that his oldest had a soccer tournament that had been rescheduled due to coach availability. "You know how it is," he wrote. "Kids' activities always take priority. We'll catch you next time." 2 days before, my sister Ashley called to say her boyfriend had surprised her with concert tickets for the same day. "They were really expensive, Morgan," she explained. "I can't ask him to waste them. You understand, right? Maybe we can stop by the next day for a quick tour." The day before the party, my phone rang while I was picking up the catered food I'd splurged on. It was my mother. "Morgan, I hate to do this," she began, and my heart sank before she even continued. "I'm not feeling well. Nothing serious, just a headache and some fatigue. I think I'm coming down with something and don't want to spread germs to everyone." "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Everyone else has already cancelled." There was a pause, just a beat too long. "Oh," she finally said. "Well, maybe that's for the best if I'm getting sick. You can just reschedule when everyone's available." After we hung up, I sat in my car in the caterer's parking lot, surrounded by bags of food meant for a party that wouldn't happen. Tears threatened, but I pushed them back. I'd spent 7 years being strong and self-sufficient, I wouldn't break now. That evening, I arranged the food in my refrigerator and set up the serving stations anyway. I put out the plates, napkins, and glasses. I made sure the house was immaculate, music playlist ready, and fresh flowers in every room. Some stubborn part of me still hoped that someone, anyone, might show up despite their excuses. As I went to bed that night, I checked social media one last time and saw something that shattered my remaining hope. My sister had posted a photo from a restaurant, not a concert venue. In the background, I could clearly see my mother, brother, his wife, their children, and several other family members all gathered around a large table, raising glasses in a toast. The caption read, "Family night out. Nothing better than being with the people who matter most. #blessed #family first." They hadn't even bothered to create convincing lies. They were all together, deliberately excluding me from their gathering while offering flimsy excuses for missing my housewarming. I turned off my phone, curled around my pillow, and finally let the tears come. I woke early on the morning of what should have been my housewarming party, momentarily forgetting the previous day's revelations. For a fleeting second, excitement fluttered in my chest before reality crashed down again. No one was coming. My family had chosen to be together without me rather than celebrate my achievement. Still, I went through the motions. I showered, styled my hair, and put on the new dress I'd purchased specially for the occasion, a forest green wrap dress that brought out the gold flecks in my hazel eyes. If nothing else, I would honor my accomplishment, even if I did so alone. In the kitchen, I began arranging the catered food on the serving platters I'd bought for the occasion. Spinach artichoke dip in a ceramic bowl, surrounded by crackers arranged in a fan pattern. Prosciutto-wrapped melon on a marble platter. Miniature crab cakes, my mother's favorite, kept warm in the oven. A cheese board with local artisanal varieties, garnished with grapes and fig jam. At 11 o'clock, the official start time printed on the invitations, I turned on the carefully curated playlist. The speakers throughout the house played Fleetwood Mac, my grandmother's favorite, as I straightened already perfect throw pillows and adjusted flower arrangements that needed no adjustment. By 11:30, I found myself standing at the living room window, peering out at the empty street. No cars approached. No family members appeared with last-minute apologies for their tardiness. I checked my phone, no messages, no calls, no explanations. Noon came and went. I poured myself a glass of the expensive champagne I'd bought to toast with everyone and sat alone at my dining room table. The house felt cavernous around me, the silence broken only by music playing for absent guests. At 1 o'clock, I tried calling my mother, the call going straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. What was there to say? I texted my sister with a simple "everything okay," and watched as the message was read but never responded to. By 2 o'clock, I'd moved to the kitchen, picking at the elaborate spread of food, appetite gone but needing something to do with my hands, with myself. The beautiful house I'd sacrificed everything for suddenly felt like a hollow achievement. At 3, restlessness drove me to the backyard where I'd set up lawn games for my nieces and nephews. I stood holding a croquet mallet, staring at the hoops I'd carefully placed that morning, and felt a wave of anger rising from somewhere deep inside. 7 years of single-minded focus, of missing family events because I was working overtime, of denying myself small pleasures, all to reach this goal. And when it came time to celebrate, my family couldn't give me a single afternoon. By 4 o'clock, I'd returned inside and was checking social media against my better judgment. My brother had posted photos of his son's soccer game, the tournament he'd claimed was the reason for his absence. Except according to the timestamp and location tag, the game had ended at noon. There had been plenty of time to come to my party afterward. Further scrolling revealed more evidence of my family's deliberate avoidance. My cousin, who'd claimed her baby was too sick to travel, had posted pictures of a brewery outing, the supposedly ill infant smiling in her husband's arms. Aunt Diane, despite her allegedly broken-down car, had checked in at a restaurant just 30 minutes from my house. The final blow came when I saw a post from a family friend, a group photo taken at a local restaurant showing my entire family gathered together. My mother, looking perfectly healthy, was in the center of the photo raising a glass. The caption read, "Reynolds Family Lunch. Great food, better company." The timestamp was 1:30 p.m. right in the middle of my housewarming party. I threw my phone across the room, not caring when it hit the wall with a crack. Hot tears spilled down my cheeks as sobs tore from my throat. I sank to the kitchen floor, surrounded by untouched party food and decorations, and let grief overwhelm me. This wasn't just about a ruined party. It was the undeniable confirmation that my family had deliberately excluded me, had chosen to be together without me, had lied to my face rather than celebrate my achievement. I don't know how long I sat there crying. The playlist had cycled through completely and started again. The ice in the champagne bucket had melted. The perfectly arranged food had wilted under the ambient heat of the kitchen. A knock at the front door startled me back to awareness. For one wild moment, hope surged, maybe they had come after all. I rushed to the door, hastily wiping tears from my face, only to find a woman I didn't recognize standing on my porch. "Hi there," she said, her expression changing from friendly to concerned when she saw my face. "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Eliza from next door. I just wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood, but this seems like a bad time." No, please, I said, suddenly desperate for human connection. Please come in. I was having a party, but no one came. Eliza stepped into my foyer, taking in the decorations, the music, the spread of food visible from the entryway. A party? With all this beautiful preparation? And no one showed? Something about her genuine outrage on my behalf broke through the last of my composure. Fresh tears welled up as I explained the situation, the 7 years of saving, the excitement of finally buying my dream home, the invitations to family, and their collective decision to go elsewhere together instead. That's awful, Eliza said, her hand on my shoulder. Truly awful. After all that work and sacrifice. Look, I know we just met, but would you like to come over to my place? My husband Ryan and I are having a few neighbors over for an informal dinner. Nothing fancy, just a potluck, but you shouldn't be alone right now. In any other circumstance, I might have politely declined, too proud to accept pity. But standing in my beautiful, empty house, I couldn't face another hour alone with my thoughts. I have all this food, I gestured toward the kitchen. It seems a shame to waste it. Eliza smiled. Bring it along. Our gathering just got upgraded. 20 minutes later, I found myself in Eliza and Ryan's cozy bungalow 3 doors down, surrounded by neighbors I'd never met who welcomed me without question. The middle-aged couple from across the street, the young parents from the corner house, the retired professor from the Blue Victorian, all greeted me warmly, exclaiming over the professional catering I'd brought and listening with genuine interest as I shared abbreviated details about my new home. 7 years of saving, Ryan repeated, impressed. That's incredible discipline. You should be proud. We should toast to that, said Walter, the retired professor, raising his glass. To Morgan, our new neighbor who shows us what determination can accomplish. May your home be filled with more worthy people than those who couldn't bother to show up today. Glasses clinked, and for the first time that day, I felt a small measure of pride return. These strangers, now neighbors, saw value in what I'd achieved, even if my own family didn't. As the evening progressed, I found myself laughing despite the emotional exhaustion. When Eliza insisted on walking me home around 10 o'clock, carrying containers of leftover food, I realized I'd made my first genuine connection in this new chapter of my life. Thank you, I told her at my front door. You saved what was starting to feel like the worst day of my life. Family can be complicated, she said wisely. But neighbors can become family too, if you let them. We have a standing Friday game night. Consider this your permanent invitation. Back inside my quiet house, I surveyed the remains of my failed party. The untouched decorations, the half-empty platters, the melted ice in buckets. But instead of renewed grief, I felt something else stirring, anger, yes, but also resolution. This house was mine. I'd earned it through years of sacrifice and dedication. I wouldn't let my family's rejection taint my accomplishment. I began cleaning up, methodically removing all evidence of the party that never happened. With each decoration I put away, each platter I washed, I felt myself reclaiming the space. This was my home, and I would fill it with people who valued me, not those who had made their priorities crystal clear. As I prepared for bed that night, I checked my phone one last time. No messages from family, no apologies, no explanations. But there was a text from Eliza, thanks for making our dinner special tonight. Welcome to the neighborhood, we're glad you're here. It wasn't the welcome I had expected or hoped for. But perhaps it was the welcome I needed. I barely slept that night, my mind replaying the humiliation of the empty housewarming, the photos of my family gathered without me, the years of sacrifice that had led to this moment of painful clarity. By morning, sadness had crystallized into resolve. I needed answers. I deserved an explanation. Without giving myself time to reconsider, I showered, dressed, and got into my car. The Sunday morning drive to my childhood home took 40 minutes, each mile strengthening my determination. I'd spent years avoiding confrontation, making excuses for my family's growing coldness, choosing career advancement over addressing the widening gap between us. No more. Mom's blue sedan sat in the driveway alongside my brother's pickup truck. Sunday breakfast, another family tradition continuing without me. I parked on the street, took a deep breath, and approached the house where I'd grown up. I didn't knock. Using the key I still carried, I opened the front door to the sound of laughter and the smell of pancakes. Conversation stopped abruptly as I walked into the kitchen, finding exactly what I'd expected: my mother at the stove, my brother James and his wife Sarah at the table with their kids, and my sister Ashley scrolling through her phone while picking at a plate of bacon. "Morgan." My mother's surprise was genuine, spatula frozen mid-flip. "We weren't expecting you. Is everything okay?" "No, everything is not okay," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You all lied to me yesterday. You chose to have a family gathering without me instead of coming to my housewarming. I want to know why." The kitchen fell silent except for the sizzle of pancake batter on the griddle. Mom turned off the stove, avoiding my eyes. "We didn't think you'd notice," Ashley finally said, setting down her phone. "You're so busy with your perfect life and perfect job and perfect house." "Notice?" I repeated incredulously. How could I not notice that every single person in my family decided to lie to me and go to a restaurant together instead of celebrating something I've worked 7 years to achieve? "See? There it is," James cut in, pointing his fork at me accusingly. 7 years. 7 years of you missing birthdays and holidays because you were working late. 7 years of barely calling unless you needed something. 7 years of making us feel like we weren't good enough for your new life. "That's not fair," I protested. "I was working multiple jobs, saving every penny. For a house none of us would ever feel welcome in anyway," my mother interrupted, finally turning to face me. Her expression wasn't angry but wounded. "You think you're better than us with your fancy house in your fancy neighborhood. You've been pulling away for years, Morgan. Yesterday just made it official." The accusation struck like a physical blow. "I never thought I was better than you. I just wanted something better than what we had growing up. I wanted security. I wanted to build something. While tearing down your relationships with everyone here," Ashley added. "You abandoned us, Morgan. You moved to the city and became someone we don't even recognize anymore." "I didn't abandon anyone. I called, I visited when I could." "When you could," James echoed sarcastically. "When it was convenient for you. When it didn't interfere with your precious career or savings plan." Sarah, James's wife, at least had the grace to look uncomfortable with the confrontation, ushering their children into the living room with promises of cartoons. "Why didn't you just tell me how you felt?" I asked, fighting back tears. "Why pretend you were coming to my housewarming if you all resented me this much?" My grandmother Eleanor emerged from the hallway then, her expression pained as she took in the scene. "I was going to come," she said softly. "I had my bag packed. But then your mother called saying everyone had reasons they couldn't attend, and it didn't make sense for just me to come all that way." Mom at least had the decency to look ashamed at this revelation. "We didn't plan to all get together without you," she said. "It just happened." James called saying they weren't going, then Ashley, and I suggested we meet for lunch instead since we were all free. "It wasn't a deliberate attempt to hurt you." "But you did hurt me," I said, my voice breaking. "Do you have any idea what yesterday was like? Waiting for hours, surrounded by food and decorations, gradually realizing that no one was coming? Discovering through social media that you were all together?" No one spoke, the weight of what they'd done settling over the kitchen. "I have sacrificed everything to build a future for myself," I continued, anger rising through my hurt. "I worked 60-hour weeks. I lived in a tiny apartment with second-hand furniture. I skipped vacations and new clothes and dinners out. And the one time I asked you all to celebrate with me, you chose to punish me instead." "We weren't trying to punish you," Mom started, but I cut her off. "Then what would you call it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you were sending a pretty clear message about where I stand in this family." My grandmother approached, reaching for my hand. "Morgan, honey, families are complicated. People get hurt, feelings fester. What happened yesterday was wrong, but maybe it's forcing us to address things we've all been avoiding for too long. I wanted to accept her olive branch, to find a path toward reconciliation, but the wound was too fresh. I needed my family yesterday, I said, pulling my hand away. I've made mistakes, missed events I should have prioritized, but I never deliberately excluded any of you from my life. I never lied to your faces or chose to hurt you when you were vulnerable. I looked around at them, my mother with her conflicted expression, James with his defensive posture, Ashley still radiating resentment, and my grandmother caught in the middle. These people who shared my blood but had become strangers in all the ways that mattered. I built that house hoping it would become a place where we could reconnect, I said finally. Where we could make new memories together. But I won't beg for a place in your lives. I won't apologize for working hard and achieving my goals. And I won't subject myself to this kind of rejection again. With that, I turned and walked out, ignoring my mother's call to come back, ignoring the ache in my chest that felt like something fundamental breaking apart. I drove home in a blur, tears making the road waver before me. The week that followed was the lowest I'd experienced since those early days after my father left. I took sick days from work for the first time in years, unable to summon the energy or focus required for my job. I moved through my beautiful house like a ghost, the achievement that had driven me for so long now feeling hollow and meaningless. I ignored calls from my grandmother and a tentative text from my mother. What was there to say? The truth had been laid bare in that kitchen confrontation, years of resentment on both sides, a gulf that seemed unbridgeable. The dream home I'd sacrificed everything for now felt like a monument to everything I'd lost along the way. On Wednesday evening, my doorbell rang. I almost didn't answer, assuming it might be family with half-hearted apologies. Instead, I found Eliza on my porch, holding a casserole dish. I know this is presumptuous, she said before I could speak, but I've always believed that food helps in times of crisis. And you looked like you were in crisis when I saw you getting your mail yesterday. I hadn't even noticed her seeing me. That obvious, huh? The 1,000-yard stare and unwashed hair were clues, she said with gentle humor. This is just a simple pasta bake, but it's better than whatever takeout you've been surviving on. I invited her in, suddenly aware of the state of my house, dishes in the sink, throw blanket crumpled on the couch, the general dishevelment of someone who'd stopped caring about appearances. I'm sorry about the mess, I began, but Eliza waved away my apology. You should have seen our place after my mom died last year, she said, moving comfortably into my kitchen to heat up the casserole. Ryan had to remind me to shower after a week. Her casual mention of profound grief somehow normalized my own pain. We ate at my dining room table, Eliza chatting about neighborhood gossip and her job as an elementary school art teacher, not pressing me to talk but creating space if I wanted to. By the time she left, I'd agreed to attend Friday game night at her house. Nothing fancy, she assured me. Just bring yourself and maybe a bottle of wine. The neighbors you met Sunday will be there too. That evening marked a turning point. The next morning, I showered, dressed professionally, and returned to work. I threw myself back into projects, focusing on what I could control rather than the family situation I couldn't. In the evenings, I began to truly settle into my home, hanging artwork, organizing closets, planting herbs in the kitchen window. Friday game night at Eliza and Ryan's became the highlight of my week. I met more neighbors, the young couple expecting their first child, the single dad raising twin boys, the retired teacher who baked incredible sourdough bread. We played board games, shared meals, and gradually, I found myself laughing again, building connections that felt genuine and nurturing. 2 weeks after the confrontation, I received a text from my sister Ashley asking if we could meet for coffee. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between our homes. I'm not here to apologize for everyone, she said once we'd gotten our drinks. But I am sorry for my part in what happened. The things I said that day in Mom's kitchen. I meant them, but I could have said them years ago instead of letting resentment build. I'm sorry too, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. I did get caught up in my goals. I did miss important moments in your life. But I never stopped caring about you, Ashley. I know, she admitted. I just felt like you had this whole other life that we weren't good enough to be part of. Your job, your city friends, your nice clothes, and now your perfect house. It was easier to push you away than feel like the poor relation you had to tolerate. That was never how I saw you, I told her. Never. We didn't solve everything in that one conversation, but it was a start. A crack in the wall that had formed between us. We agreed to try monthly sister lunches, a small step toward rebuilding our relationship. My mother was a harder case. Her text messages remained surface level, her hurt too deep for quick resolution. James didn't reach out at all. But Grandma Eleanor called regularly, and I made a point of visiting her alone, rebuilding our connection away from the complicated dynamics of my parents' house. As spring turned to summer, I made a decision. I would host a different kind of gathering in my home, not a family housewarming but a neighborhood potluck. I invited Eliza and Ryan, Walter from the Victorian, the young couple who'd had their baby, the single dad and his boys, and others I'd met through Friday game nights. The day of the gathering, my house filled with people bringing dishes, children running through the backyard, conversations flowing easily between neighbors who were becoming friends. The home that had felt so empty that first day now pulsed with life and genuine connection. Standing in my kitchen, watching Ryan teach the twins how to play croquet in the backyard while Walter debated books with Eliza on the porch, I felt something settle within me. This wasn't the family gathering I'd once envisioned, but it was something equally valuable, a community I was building, one relationship at a time. 6 months after the housewarming that never happened, my home had transformed from an empty achievement into the center of a vibrant community I'd never expected to find. The Thursday night dinner group that started spontaneously after Eliza's casserole rescue had become a weekly tradition, rotating between our houses with an ever-expanding circle of neighbors. I'd done more than decorate my house during this time, I'd rebuilt myself. The aching wound of family rejection had gradually scarred over. It still hurt when touched, but it no longer defined me. I'd learned to set boundaries with my family, engaging on my terms rather than desperately seeking approval that might never come. My relationship with Ashley continued to improve through our monthly sister lunches. We navigated conversations carefully at first, avoiding triggers that might reignite old resentments. Gradually, we began sharing more authentic parts of ourselves, her anxiety about her art career, my loneliness during those years of single-minded saving, the childhood experiences we remembered differently. I always thought you had it all together, she admitted during our fourth lunch. Even as kids, you never seemed to need anyone. I was so jealous of your confidence. It wasn't confidence, I told her. It was fear. I was terrified of ending up struggling like Mom did after Dad left. Every decision I made was about creating security. These revelations helped bridge the gap between us. Ashley visited my house for the first time in August, arriving with a painting she'd created specifically for my living room, an abstract landscape in blues and greens that perfectly complemented my decor. "This is beautiful," I said, genuinely moved by the gesture. "It's how I see your place," she explained. "Serene but with depth. You've created something really special here, Morgan." My mother remained more distant, but small steps emerged there too. Our phone calls became slightly less strained. She sent a housewarming gift, belatedly, of handmade curtains for my kitchen. I recognized the gesture for what it was, an acknowledgement, if not an apology. James was the hardest case. My brother had always been stubborn, a trait we shared. But when his son Ethan's baseball team made the regional championships, I made a point of attending the game, standing awkwardly on the sidelines until James noticed me. "You came," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "He's my nephew," I replied simply. "I've missed too much already." It wasn't immediate reconciliation, but it was a beginning. James invited me to Ethan's birthday party the following month, a small olive branch I gratefully accepted. My grandmother Eleanor became my most frequent family visitor. At 83, she still drove herself the 40 minutes to my house for afternoon teas and garden consultations. She helped me plant a vegetable garden in a sunny corner of the yard, sharing wisdom passed down through generations. "Your grandfather would have loved this place," she told me one afternoon as we sat on the porch swing. "He always said you'd make something special of yourself." "I wish he could have seen it," I said, feeling the familiar pang of his absence. "Oh, he sees it," she said with the quiet confidence of someone who had loved deeply for over 5 decades. "And he's proud, just like I am." My own social circle expanded beyond neighbors. Colleagues from work who'd previously been just professional connections were now invited to weekend brunches. My boss Natalie, who'd mentored me through promotions and career decisions, became a regular visitor, bringing her wife and their golden retriever who loved running in my fenced backyard. The most unexpected relationship began at a neighborhood block party in early September. Walter, my elderly neighbor from the Victorian, introduced me to his nephew Michael, who was visiting from Chicago. At 36, Michael was a pediatric surgeon with kind eyes and an easy laugh. Our conversation flowed effortlessly from books to travel to our shared love of historical architecture. "My uncle speaks very highly of you," he told me as we sat on a picnic blanket watching fireworks at the end of the evening. "Says you're the best thing to happen to this neighborhood in years." "Walter exaggerates," I said, feeling myself blush. "But I've found something special here." "I can see that," Michael replied, his gaze holding mine a moment longer than necessary. When he called the following week to say he'd be in town again and would I like to have dinner, I surprised myself by saying yes. Our first date turned into a second, then a third. Despite the distance, he in Chicago, me in Boston, we found ourselves navigating a long-distance relationship that felt worth the effort. "I've applied for a position at Boston Children's," he told me during a video call in October. "It's a long shot, but worth trying," I finished for him, both of us acknowledging that something significant was growing between us. As Thanksgiving approached, my first major holiday in the new house, I made a bold decision. I would host dinner, inviting both my biological family and the chosen family I'd built over the past months. It was a risk, bringing these worlds together, but one that felt right. The invitation process was delicate. I called my mother personally, making it clear that this was not an obligation but an open door if she wanted to walk through it. "There will be other people there," I explained. "Neighbors, friends from work. It won't just be family." "That might be easier, actually," she admitted. "Less pressure." When Thanksgiving Day arrived, I felt none of the anxiety that had preceded my failed housewarming. I had prepared the house and meal with care, but my happiness no longer hinged on who walked through my door. I had learned to find contentment in the life I was building, not in others' validation of it. The gathering exceeded my cautious hopes. My mother arrived with a homemade pie and awkward determination. James and his family came bearing wine and tentative smiles. Ashley and her boyfriend brought dinner rolls and genuine enthusiasm. Grandma Eleanor was escorted by Walter, the two having formed their own friendship during her visits. They integrated surprisingly well with my neighborhood friends. Eliza charmed my mother with stories of her elementary school art classes. Ryan and James discovered a shared passion for fishing. The children formed instant alliances, racing through the house and yard with the easy camaraderie of youth. Michael, who'd flown in from Chicago specifically for the gathering, moved comfortably between groups, his natural warmth bridging any awkward gaps. I caught him in deep conversation with my brother, both laughing over shared medical horror stories, James from his work as a paramedic, Michael from his surgical residency. Standing in my kitchen, surveying the scene of family and friends mingled together in my home, I felt a wave of gratitude so intense it brought tears to my eyes. This was what I had been working toward all along, though I hadn't known it, not just a house, but a home filled with authentic connections. Later, as guests helped clear dishes and pack leftovers, my mother found me alone in the pantry, searching for storage containers. "This is a beautiful home, Morgan," she said quietly. "And I don't just mean the house. I mean what you've created here, the people, the feeling. I'm sorry I couldn't see it sooner." It wasn't a complete resolution of our complicated relationship, but it was an acknowledgement that mattered deeply. "Thank you for coming today," I replied simply. "It means a lot that you're here." As the 1-year anniversary of moving into my house approached, I found myself reflecting on the journey. The 7 years of sacrifice that had sometimes felt like punishment had given me more than financial security. They had taught me perseverance, self-reliance, and ultimately, the courage to build a life that reflected my truest values. The family rejection that had once devastated me now seemed like a painful but necessary awakening. It had forced me to examine what family truly meant, not just blood connections, but chosen bonds built on mutual respect and genuine care. My house was no longer just a physical achievement but the embodiment of a life philosophy I was still learning to articulate, that home isn't about impressing others or seeking approval, but about creating space for authentic connection and personal growth. On the exact anniversary of my move-in date, I hosted a different kind of party, a home anniversary celebration with neighbors, work friends, the family members who had made efforts to reconnect, and Michael, who had received the position at Boston Children's and would be relocating the following month. As I looked around at the gathering, so different from the empty housewarming a year before, I felt a sense of completion. The dream that had driven me for 7 years had evolved into something far richer than I had initially imagined. "I'd like to make a toast," I said, raising my glass as conversations quieted. "To all of you who have helped turn these walls and floors into a true home. A year ago, I thought I had reached my goal when I got the keys to this house. I didn't realize that the real journey was just beginning." Glasses clinked as warm smiles reflected back at me from every corner of the room. This was the true housewarming, not the one I had planned, but the one I needed. "What's been your greatest lesson from this first year in your dream home?" Michael asked later as we stood on the porch watching the last guests depart. I considered the question carefully before answering. That dreams evolve, and sometimes disappointment leads you exactly where you need to go. I spent 7 years focused on getting the perfect house, but what makes it perfect isn't the craftsmanship or the address, it's the people who fill it with laughter and support. As the door closed behind the final guest, I stood in my entryway, taking in the peaceful aftermath of celebration, empty glasses waiting to be washed, jacket forgotten on a chair, the lingering warmth of shared connection. This was home. Not because I owned the deed, but because I had finally learned to open the door to authentic relationships, forgiveness, and the messy, beautiful reality of human connection. Have you ever experienced a profound disappointment that ultimately led you to something better? Share your story in the comments below. And if this journey of homeownership, family complications, and finding your tribe resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that sometimes our deepest wounds lead to unexpected healing. Thank you for joining me today on this reflection of my first year in my dream home. May your own homes be filled with genuine love and acceptance.